Hello everyone, I am Fuwa-san and today I will review Hearthstone's upcoming set, Rise of Shadows. I will review this set with a focus on esports spectating, so not really as a player. And about that, this next year's new format is named Specialists. Up until now, we had formats where players brought various decks, usually 4. The opponent banned one deck. One deck was banned, so it was a best of 5 with up to 3 different decks played during a match. Now with the specialist format, every player brings 3 decks with very few differences between the decks, like 5 cards maximum. So this new format will be interesting. It means less different classes per match, but maybe more consistency between a match, since it will be always the same matchup. So I hope it's not too boring to watch up to 5 times the same decks, more or less, one against another. But it will help with the problem of randomness, since maybe if you have one lucky game, the next one you will have to be lucky again. Or so I will review each card of the set and maybe give them like a thumbs up or a thumbs down, some kind of system like that, but mostly see them if they will be interesting to watch played or less interesting. We'll see. So this set, Rise of Shadows, has like 3 new big keywords, or has a few new things to show. So we have 2 main factions: the villains and the Dalaran protectors, the good guys. Let's say. So the villains have Lackeys. We'll see more on that later, and schemes. Lackeys are 1 mana cards that have an effect when they're played, and schemes are cards then each turn they are in your hand, they get stronger. The other side, the Dalaran protectors, have twin spells, which is a bit similar to Echo, where when after you play the twin spell, you gain a copy of it that is not twin spell, so you can cast each spell twice. So let's start with the Lackeys. So we'll see after cards that create Lackeys, but so these are uncollectible. You will generate them with other cards. So the Ethereal Lackey allows you to discover a spell. Obviously quite strong for a 1-drop, but you will have to create it before. The next one summons a random 2-cost minion, so you kind of get 3 mana out of 1, but it's random, so maybe one of the least interesting of the Lackeys, in my opinion. Next one gives a friendly minion +1 attack and rush, one of the strongest. You can play it very easily with 1 floating mana and use one of your bigger minions right away. Really nice. The Cobble Lackey deals 2 damage, quite useful. Maybe you won't count on it, but depending on the class you play, it can really help. And the last one is an evolve effect, so it transforms one of your friendly minions into one that costs 1 more. So it can be useful, but it's like evolve, it's very random. and since it's only 1 minion, it might be less effective. So next, we'll see the Druid minions. Druid has 2 new kind of, not really new archetypes that are really pushed this expansion. So the token Druid, with very cheap minions that you can play in large quantities and buffs to make them stronger, and some healing matters cards. So the Acorn Bearer is a 1 mana card with 2/1, which is sort of strong. Yeah, it's useful for, it's good for a 1-drop, and it gives you 2 1/1 squirrels. So really useful if you want for 1 card you can play 3 minions. Next we have the Crystal Sun. So yeah, thumbs up for this card. Next we have the Crystal Song Portal. It allows you to discover a Druid minion, and if your hand has no minions, you keep all 3. So the first effect is already quite useful for cheap minion decks and for other minion-based decks. Druid has a lot of strong minions, and with the discover effect, you usually find one that suits your needs. And the second effect, I'm not sure how much the condition is easy to use or not, but maybe it's not that powerful. Drawing 3 cards for 2 mana is really good, but since they are random, you might have some almost unplayable cards or cards that you don't really want to play. So we'll see how it ends up. But for the first effect alone, thumbs up, and for the second one, I don't know. Next is the Dreamway Guardians. You summon 2 1/2 Dryads with lifesteal. So really useful. 1/2 is not really strong, but lifesteal can help you. And the fact that it's quite cheap and you summon 2 really fits the token Druid archetype, and it can, yeah, it's really strong. Thumbs up for this one as well. Next we have the first twin spell. So for 8 mana you summon 5 2/2 Treants. I'm not as much a fan of this one. 2/2 Treants are maybe a bit weak for 8 mana, but since you can buff them easily, and you can, if you run out of board, you can get back on the board. But 8 mana is a bit prohibitive. You don't have many buffs that can be played. Maybe you can have 5 3/3 Treants at the end of your turn. So yeah, I'd say thumbs down for this card. I prefer the other cards that allows to create big boards. I think it's a bit too simple and a bit too expensive. So next, Blessing of the Ancients for 3 mana, so you can't play it just after the Forest's Aid, but it gives all your minions +1/+1, and it's a twin spell. So obviously it's really, really strong, really useful in a kind of token deck. And yeah, I think this card, if Druid sees play, this card will probably see play in any archetype, but most probably in token Druid. Next, we have Crystal Power. So it's a choose 1 card for very cheap. Either you deal 2 damage to a minion, or you restore 5 health. So I think the 5 health is quite strong for 1 mana, but healing is usually maybe not that important, depending, because you need to be hurt first. So against very rush, against a deck, a quick deck, aggro deck, against an aggro deck, you will want maybe to restore your health, but you usually will most likely want to kill an enemy minion, because 5 health for an aggro deck is not that much. So yeah, I think this one is a thumbs down. I'm not a big fan of the restoring health, and 2 damage for 1 mana, it's okay. Life Weaver is one of the Healing Matters cards. So when you restore health, you add a random druid spell to your hand. So I think this one is mostly useful with like the Dryads, with Lifesteal, or with random common healing minions, but I don't think it will see play. I guess it's a thumbs up, but I don't think we'll see it in competitive Hearthstone. Next we have the Crystal Stag, rush 4/4 card minion for 5 mana with the battle cry. If you restored 5 health this game, summon a copy of this. So obviously 4/4 with rush is quite good. 5 mana is maybe on the expensive side, but still. And if the condition is met, the card is really, really powerful. The thing is, 5 health is not that easy to restore, but since it's this game, like on the later game, you can easily put 2 of these with 1 card. But still, thumbs down for this one. Next is Lucent Bark, a 8 mana card with taunt, 4/8, so really, really strong. When it dies, it goes dormant, so it means it can't be targeted and it doesn't have taunt or stats anymore. And if you restore 5 health, you awaken this minion. So I think on its own, it's a bit weak for 8 mana, but a good taunt is always good. And maybe it can end up being annoying if you can't heal, because you have something that takes up your board, but it's something that can't be attacked, that isn't really useful. So depending on how easy it is to restore 5 health, I don't think it will see play. And speaking of how easy, here is the standard cards that allows you to restore health in Druid, so without counting common cards, neutral cards. So Ancient of Lore, which is really expensive, but yeah, not great. Healing Touch, for 3 mana you restore 8. And that's all, apparently. So yeah, it's really not much, and restoring 5 with neutral cards may be possible, maybe easy, but I don't think healing decks work that well, especially in a competitive environment. So finally we have the Keeper Staladris, who is very strong. So 2 mana, 2/3 is a decent body, but after you cast a choose one spell, you add copies of both choices to your hand. So that's kind of like Fandral, but you get to choose, you have more choice. So you play the spell, you choose one of the effects, and then you get both copies. So for example, the card that allows you to deal 2 damage or heal 5, you can end up dealing 2 times 2 damage and healing 5, or healing 2 times 5 health and dealing 2 damage. Note that each copy of the choices cost the same amount as the basic card, the choose one card. So it can end up being quite expensive, but yeah, for 2 mana and another card, you get to draw 2 maybe subpar but decent cards. So yeah, I hope this one gets played. Big thumbs up, and I hope we see interesting things with that. Next we have the Hunter cards. So Hunter, this expansion, has a lot of damaging spells and some neutral cards with spell damage can make this quite interesting, like a spell damage hunter. So first we have the Rapid Fire, really cheap at 1 mana. You deal 1 damage with the bonus of being a twin spell, so you can cast it twice. Obviously, upfront like that, 1 mana for 1 damage is okay. You do use all of a card, which is a hunter doesn't have much draw, so it is a bit prohibitive, I'd say. But being a twin spell, you can use it twice. Okay, but where the card really shines would be in a spell damage focused hunter deck, where you can use the 1 damage if needed, but you would prefer use it as a big burst with spell damage and kill 2 minions or deal a lot of damage to the enemy hero. Next we have Mark. So big thumbs up for this one. Next we have Marked Shot. 4 mana, deal 5 damage to a minion. It's a bit similar to Rapid Fire in terms of 1 mana per damage, 1 damage per mana rather. But it also allows you to discover a spell. I think I like it. 4 damage usually kills most early minions, having often 3 life. And the Discover spell allows you to cycle this card with another one. So it's kind of like the twin spell, the Rapid Fire, but you gain maybe a more useful spell after having cast it. So yeah, thumbs up for this one too. Next is Arcane Fletcher. Whenever you play a 1-cost minion, you draw a spell from your deck. So this is kind of pushing the spell hunter a bit. So 1-cost minions, you usually don't want too much of those in your deck, but since it allows you to draw with each minion, it's really good. If you have some minions of 1 cost and you can combine them with this, it's quite powerful. The limits I see, the annoying thing that I see, it's you draw specifically a spell. So you can't play a 1-cost minion, draw a 1-cost minion, play it, draw another one, etc. You have to have some deck balancing. So maybe it will be too hard to put in a deck and to use effectively. So still a thumbs up, because I like the Spell Hunter, and I like this kind of new damage oriented Spell Hunter, but I think it's a bit too weak, because 1-cost minions, you don't want too much of them in your deck. Next is the Shimmerfly. Death Rattle, you add a random hunter spell to your hand. So it's kind of similar to the last card, but you are almost sure to get the card, but it's random. So it is a bit less powerful, because you can't choose the spells you want in your. You can choose them by placing them in your deck, but it's a 1-drop, a decent one. Maybe it will see play, probably not actually, but I still like it, and the art is really sick. Thumbs up. Verisa Windrunner is a legendary card. It's really weak for its mana cost, but Battle Cry, you equip a bow. So the Star's Fury is this bow. So after your hero attacks, you gain spell damage +2 this turn. So obviously really strong with the concept of spell damage hunter. It is a bit limited because it's not like you have always spell damage, but you can control it. If your enemy doesn't destroy this weapon, you can choose when you want that spell damage. And spell damage +2 is really strong. And it's 3 durability, so you can do it 3 times. Quite good. Overall, thumbs up for Verissa and her bow. Next we have 9 lives. So 9 lives allows you to discover one of your death rattle minions that died this game. You also trigger its death rattle. So really strong, especially if you have some cool death rattle minions. You probably will want to play this later on the game, so not with the weaker death rattles minions, but with the bigger, because you trigger the death rattle. But since you discover a minion, you also have use for the weaker ones. So because if you discover it, you draw the minion. So yeah, I think it's really flexible. It can fit in probably most hunter decks because you usually have 1 of 2 minions that happen to be death rattle. So yeah, with 3 mana it's quite decent. You kind of draw a card and have an effect. So thumbs up, big thumbs up for this one. Next we have the Ursatron. Death Rattle, draw a mech from your deck. So yeah, it's interesting, maybe. I don't remember on top of my head which mechs a hunter has, but yeah, it's decent. I'd say thumbs down, but maybe a thumbs up, but probably mostly down. Next we have the Oblivitron. Death Rattle, you summon a mech from your hand and you trigger its Death Rattle. So yeah, Death Rattle mechs is a thing. Maybe it was last set, I haven't checked. But yeah, the fact that you summon a mech is good. The fact that you trigger its Death Rattle is good, but the fact that you need this one to die and it's quite expensive for a weak body, thumbs down all around, I think. Next is the Hunting Party. You copy all beasts in your hand. So obviously quite useful if you have a lot of beasts. Maybe a bit expensive to then play a stampede of beasts, but yeah, I think this might see play on a cheap minions, cheap beasts hunter, so you kind of draw a lot of beasts. But yeah, I think this one is not that interesting, and I hope no sick OTK combo comes out of it. Next one, the final hunter card is Unleash the Beast. It's a twin spell which allows you to summon a 5/5 wyvern with rush for 6 mana. It's kind of decent. Rush minions tend to be a bit weaker than for their mana. So yeah, I'm not sure if this will be played a lot. I don't think it's that strong, but it's sort of a removal spell, like a really expensive, weaker fireball, but that gives you a minion. So I don't think Hunter needs this that much, but yeah, minions in Hunter, it's always cool, and the Wyvern, it's probably a beast too, so it helps. Next, we'll go into the Mage cards. So Mage has not really a new, but pushed really strongly the archetype of summoning minions with spells, and it's kind of all. The rest of the cards are what Mage usually does. So the first Mage card is Conjurer's Calling, which is a twin spell that allows you to destroy a minion, enemy or friendly. Then you summon 2 minions of the same cost to replace it. So it's really interesting, it's quite flexible. You can play this on your own minion to gain 2 minions, and maybe you have some understated expensive minion that has a big battle cry that you then destroy to make 2 hopefully bigger minions. And it's also some kind of way to destroy enemy minions for cheap. 3 mana is quite cheap for that, but with the downside of giving your opponent more minions. So you might find yourself in a worse position. So I really want this card to be played. I think it will, and we will end up in silly situation with this. And yeah, thumbs up. And on top of that, it's a twin spell, so you can use it twice, even on the same turn, if one of the minions you created is not good, like too strong in your opponent's side or too weak in your side. Next, we have the Power of Creation, another spell that allows you to summon minions. So you discover a 6-cost minion, then summon 2 copies of it. For 8 mana, it's quite powerful because it's not totally random, and I think 6-cost minions start to be really strong. And yeah, having 2 of those is already quite good. So thumbs up for this one. So the big daddy himself, Khadgar, is here to buff all those cards, those last cards. So when you summon a minion, you summon twice as many. So obviously, for very cheap, it allows you for 10 mana to use Power of Creation and summon 4 copies of a 6-cost minion, which on a 10 mana turn is usually quite strong, especially if you manage to get like a powerful passive like a taunt or spell damage maybe. Yeah, it's really good. And this one, it makes killing your own minions really strong because you summon 4 minions to replace it. So yeah, I think this will see the Khadgar will see play. I think it will be fun, and I hope it's not too broken. So yeah, big thumbs up for Khadgar. Next is Ray of Frost. It's a twin spell for 1 mana. You freeze a minion. Simple. But if it's already frozen, you deal 2 damage for a minion. So obviously really strong. 1 mana spell, we'll see later, is very useful. And you usually don't want those in your deck, but the twin spell makes it kind of draw a card after its effect. So you could just use it twice on the same unfrozen minion to deal 2 damage and maybe kill it, or just having it frozen with 2 more damage, or use it to burst damage with like deal 4 damage for 2 mana. So yeah, it's interesting. It probably will see play, but the starting effect, the freezing a minion, might be the weakest thing. You usually want to have the already frozen condition active when you use this. Next is Magic Trick, a very cheap spell that allows you to discover a spell that costs 3 or less. So we can see a pattern here, very cheap spells with some useful effects, like the twin spell that allows you to use another cheap spell, and this one also. and the discover is always great because it makes it less random, and you have some agency to see interesting plays. So here we have Magic Dart Frog. So we had a few cheap spells, and this uses them really well. So 1/3 for 2 mana, it's decent. Usually we can find 1/3 for 1 mana, but each time you cast a spell, you deal 1 damage to a random enemy minion. So it synergizes really well with those cheap spells that allows you to get more cheap spells, that allows you to cast things. Yeah, I think this one is really great. Next we have the Mana Cyclone, another card that synergizes with cheap spells. So for each spell you've cast this turn, you add a random mage spell to your hand. So obviously you want to cast the Magic Dart Frog, then maybe the Twin Spell, the Magic Trick, another spell you get, the twin of the Twin Spell, and then play the Mana Cyclone and get a lot of spells on your hand. So the downside of cheap cards is usually the draw, but then this kind of is like draw. You generate more cards to play, and the fact that it's random means you usually, the cards that you gain might not be cheap spells, but maybe you don't put cheap spells on your deck when you're building it, and with this you get big spells that are more powerful and you can play slower. Next is the Kirin Tor Tricaster, which is a huge spell damage +3 for just 4 mana, but with the downside that your spells cost 1 more. So I'm not sure if this card, if the downside is not too crippling, but it's still usually for 1 more mana, 3 damage is probably worth it. So for example, with the cheap spell you can deal 5 damage each time for just 2, which is quite good, and you can cast it twice for 4 mana, you deal 10 damage, which is Pyroblast for really cheap. So yeah, maybe in some kind of combo, maybe something, but I hope it just isn't used for OTK. The next one we have Calegos, a big 4/12 dragon for 10 mana, that when you play it, you discover a spell. Quite okay. But the most interesting thing is your first spell each turn costs 0. So the spell you discover, you can play it right away. If you have some other spell, you can play it right away. So that means you can just use this for free if you already wanted to cast a big spell. So yeah, I think this card is really strong, and if it lives on the board with 12 health, it really might. You can cast another free spell the next turn. So yeah, really powerful effects, and you don't even need to have a big spell, since it gives you a spell when you play it. So yeah, I think this card can be useful in any mage deck, but most probably in big spell mage. Next we have Messenger Raven, which is the last mage card for this set, and it's a battle cry that discovers you a mage minion. So I think it's quite less interesting than the other spell-oriented cards, but maybe you discover a minion that makes use of your secrets or makes your spells more powerful or something. Yeah, thumbs down for this one, but still I like that I like that it's a discover effect. Next we have the Paladin cards. So Paladin kind of has some dragon synergy, like some shy dragon synergy, and has really great secret oriented cards. So the first here is the Bronze Herald, which is a dragon that when it dies, you gain 2 4/4 dragons to your hand. So it's a bit on the weak side. For 3 mana you only have 3/2, but it allows you to draw dragons, and yeah, maybe you'll want to have dragons in your hand or in play as a Paladin. Thumbs down for this one. Yeah, I think thumbs down for this one. I think the archetype is not that interesting yet, at least. Next we have the Dragon Speaker, which for 5 mana gives all your dragons in your hand +3/+3. So it's a good buff card. It's slightly weak, but the +3/+3 is better than most buff cards we had. But I don't think it's good enough. Thumbs down for this one. Next we have Nozari, which is a dragon, a big 4/12 dragon. For 10 mana, you restore both heroes to full health. So it's really slow. The full health is useful against quicker decks, but since it's at 10 mana, you maybe are already dead. And yeah, it synergizes with some cards that allows you that hurts you and then you heal yourself. I don't know. I hope this doesn't really see play, because it really slows down the game. And if we have 3 games with a deck with this card, yeah. Next is Duel. You summon a minion from each player's deck and they fight. So obviously you'd want bigger minions than your opponents, so you can kill one of their minions and still have your minion on board. But I'm not sure exactly how this works, since it's summon a minion and not a copy. Does it take the card from the player's deck, or can you still draw your minion? Can the adversary still draw their minion? I don't know. But in the first case, if it takes the minion, like it recruits both minions, it's really strong, especially against combo decks that rely on a few minions that they absolutely want. I'm really happy if you see less of these kinds of decks. But if it's just a copy of the minions, it's still useful if you build your deck a bit around, because for 5 mana you might summon a big dragon or a big creature, big minion, and have it just a bit hurt. But you can also have the case where you summon a big enemy minion, and a really weak one for yourself. So as a combo deck disruptor, big thumbs up. If it doesn't work that way, big thumbs down. Next card is Call to Adventure. You draw the lowest cost minion from your deck and you give it +2/+2. So obviously +2/+2 is really significant in a cheap minion, if you can play it right away or just the next turn. And since it targets the lowest cost, it's really strong. And usually you don't want to draw your low cost minions on the late game, so having a targeted draw for that makes them a bit better, can also be quite useful. So I'm not sure if it's that interesting of a card, but I think it's quite strong and I think it will see play. So yeah, thumbs up. Next is Lightforge Blessing, a twin spell that gives a friendly minion lifesteal for really cheap. So it's an interesting way to heal, since Paladin quite likes has a few cards lately that hurts the Paladin, and then wants to heal himself. So this card is quite flexible, since you can play it on a strong minion, or maybe on a weak minion that then becomes a target for the opponent. So yeah, it's really interesting, and the twin spell aspect is quite a good bonus, since yeah, you can always keep it for later. Or, yeah, I like it. Thumbs up. Next is the secret of this set, the Paladin secret. When your opponent casts a spell, you give your minions +2 health. So Paladin secrets are usually quite strong, and this one has a massive potential, since most opponents want to cast spells, and if you play this on a big board, it's a lot of health you gain on your minions. And even if you played it on a one minion board, it's 1 mana. It's so cheap. It's really good. Yeah, this one is quite strong, and the annoyance potential might be a bit too much if the opponent targets a minion with the exact damage with a spell, and then it gets +2 health. Yeah, thumbs up for this one. I don't know if I already said. Next is Desperate Measures, a twin spell that casts you a random Paladin secret for 1 mana. So obviously the random is a bit less powerful than Discover, but it's really great for confusing the opponent, since usually people choose, when they can discover a secret, they choose the stronger ones. So here I think pro players will have a harder time to counterplay, because it's totally random. It can be any of the Paladin secrets, so it will make for harder counterplays, which is kind of weird. But yeah, I think it's a bit more powerful in this way than Discover secrets. Mysterious Blade is a weapon. For 2 mana you have a 2/2 weapon with Battle Cry. If you control a secret, it's a 3/2 weapon. So obviously really strong. 3/2 for 2 as a weapon usually destroys most minions in the early game. And if you manage to mulligan this with the 1 mana secret or with the Desperate Measures, it's really, really good. Thumbs up for this weapon. The last Paladin card is Commander Rissa, a 3 mana 4/3, which is decent, that has the effect your secrets trigger twice. So obviously it depends on the secrets. You will want secrets that can stack, secret that buffs your guys, or the one that resurrects one of your minions with 1 health, so you get 2 of that minion. But and other secrets don't really use the triggering twice. I think there's one that gives 1 or multiple minions Divine Shield, so maybe it's more useful with some secret than others, but still quite powerful. And since Paladin secrets are quite cheap, you can play a lot of secrets and maybe random ones on top, so the opponent has to trigger at least 1 or 2 just to kill the commander. And so yeah, you get value, you probably get value out of this one. Next we have the Priest cards. So Priest is kind of all over the place in terms of archetypes. It has some resurrection-oriented cards. It has some death rattle-oriented cards, knowing that the quest is gone now. It has some silence cards and cards that benefit from being silenced, and the usual priest shenanigans. So here we have Mass Resurrection that summon 3 friendly minions that die this game. So obviously really powerful. For 9 mana, that's like that's an average of 3 mana per minion resurrected. So yeah, it's okay. I still thumbs down because I don't like the resurrections that much. Next is Katrina Muerte. At the end of your turn, you summon a friendly minion that died this game. So 8 mana, you play this card, and at the end of your turn, you already gained a minion. So for 8 mana at 6/8, it's a bit weak, but you usually will put this card in a deck that will have strong minions to resurrect. So yeah, maybe it probably will only resurrect 1 minion, but 8 health is not that easy to kill in 1 turn, but usually is dealt quickly. Next we have a few death rattle cards. So Convincing Infiltrator, 5 mana 2/6 taunt, so decent taunt body, and with a death rattle you destroy a random enemy minion, which is where this card really shines, because since it's the randomness makes it the opponent doesn't really want to kill this, but it's a taunt, so they usually don't have a choice. Evil Conscriptor is it one of the first? Is the first Lackey card I think we saw. So it's Death Rattle. You add a Lackey to your hand. It's quite cheap. You only gain 1 Lackey, which is maybe not really useful. And I think Priest is the class that gains the least from the Lackeys overall. But since you can probably maybe resurrect this, I don't think it's worth it, especially if you play Lackeys or something. You may be able to trigger its Death Rattle multiple times, but I think it's the weakest of the Lackey generators. Maybe the second weakest, actually. So yeah, thumbs down for this one. Next is the Shadowy Figure. So Battle Cry, it transforms into a 2/2 copy of a friendly Death Rattle minion. So obviously Priest has a lot of Death Rattles, maybe less now with the quest gone, but still. It allows you to gain a free effect of the Death Rattle for just 2 mana, which depending can be good. So yeah, thumbs up for this one. Next we have the Hench Clan Shade Quill, strong card with only 4 mana. You have a 4/7, but it has a downside, which is when it dies, it restores 5 health to the enemy hero. So this card just in itself is kind of balanced. You would want to deal at least 5 damage with it to be worth it, but maybe just gaining control of the board is what you want. So could be seen just in itself, but where it shines, it's with the new, well, not new, with some silence cards, with some silencing your own minions, like this one. It's a big target. It's a good card you would want for that. So speaking of silence, we have the Unsleeping Soul, which silence a friendly minion, specifically a friendly one, and then summon a copy of it. So yeah, it's expensive for the silence effect. So you might not want to use it on your cheaper can't attack minions or thing or cards like that. But maybe already with the Hench Clan Shade Quill, it's already worth it, because for 4 mana you play another one and the copy is silenced, so it doesn't have the death rattle. So yeah, I think it's a thumbs up, because I like the copying minions, and we'll see if the silence is useful or not. Next we have our first scheme, which is Lazul's scheme. You reduce the attack of an enemy minion by 1 until your next turn, and each turn the 1 upgrades. So if you keep this card on your hand, it allows you to reduce the attack by 2, 3, 4, etc. So it can be useful, but as itself, not seeing any combos, it's kind of a cheap removal that costs you another card. So with cards like Topsy Turvy, that changes the attack for the health, means you kill, if you reduce the attack enough, you kill the minion. So yeah, as a removal, it's a bit annoying to have to use an additional card. But since Priest has usually an easy way to draw lots of cards, it could see play. Overall, it's still a thumbs down. Next is Forbidden Words. You spend all your mana to destroy a minion with that much attack or less. So with a card like Lazul's Scheme, it combines to make this one cheaper, but still, I think where this card is the most powerful, it is because it allows you to kill 4 attack minions easily for just 4 mana, where the Shadow Word Pain and Shadow Word Death can't. So probably we'll see play, maybe just in 1 copy, or yeah, we'll see. But I'm not a big fan of the card. I'd say thumbs down. The final one is Madame Lazul herself. So Battle Cry, you discover a copy of a card in your opponent's hand. So really cheap, 3 mana, and you draw a card and you get a minion that is a bit on the weak side. And since it's a card of your opponent's, it's usually a strong card. Maybe not the card you want to play yourself, but it also allows you to learn of a card of 3 cards from your opponent's hand, and information is usually very strong. So yeah, I think it will see play. I think the effect is maybe a bit cheap, but still probably balanced in the end. Next we have Rogue cards. So Rogue don't have much of new archetypes. This set enhances the Burgle Rogue, which used cards from the opponent's class, and has some interesting Lackey synergy. So the first card is the Hench Clan Burglar. With a Battle Cry, discover a spell from another class. So this one is, I think, what the last Burglar spells should have been, because you don't discover specifically from your opponent's class, but from any other non-rogue class. So obviously better synergy with some cards that want you to have non-rogue class, and maybe you don't want to have an aggro card against an aggro deck. So it allows you to find more of the cards you want against the opponent and less the cards that maybe are not that useful for you in that situation. So yeah, really interesting, really strong, and I'd like them to retcon the burglars, spells, and minions that get cards from the opponent's class to have from just another class like this one. It would be a bit more flexible, maybe a bit too random in some cases, but yeah, really big fan. Thumbs up for this one. Next is the Underbelly Fence. So Battle Cry, if you're holding a card from another class, it gains +1/+1 on Rush. So 2/3 for free is decent-ish, and with the bonus that might be quite easy to make happen with especially the Hench Clan Burglar, it makes it a really strong card. 3/4 and Rush for just 2 mana is really strong. So thumbs up for this card. Next we have Vendetta. Deals 4 damage to a minion for 4 mana. But where it shines, it's for 0 mana if you're holding a card from another class. So it will probably be quite easy to have that. Maybe less in the mirror matchup, but still possible. And 4 damage for 0 mana is really strong. So thumbs up for this one. Next is the Evil Miscreant. It's a combo card that adds 2 random Lackeys to your hand. So it's quite weak with 1 attack, but 5 health is quite good, and you can probably get some useful Lackey to buff this one. So either the Evolve or the +1/+1 and Rush. The fact that it's a combo card means it's a bit harder to pull off, but in Rogue, well, all combo cards are in Rogue, but Rogue usually manage to play these. So yeah, it's overall one of the best, I'd say, Lackey cards, Lackey generating cards. Next, we have the Heist Baron Togwaggle. So if you have a Lackey when you play this card, you choose a fantastic treasure. So if you don't have a Lackey, this card is really weak. For 6 mana, only 5/5. But with a Lackey, it creates a huge card with very powerful effects. So there are four fantastic treasures. The first one is the Golden Kobold, which can be useful in Rogue, but I don't think it's the best. And yeah, what I really like about these fantastic treasures is that you can choose one of the 4. So maybe some will never be chosen because they are weak in most situations, but they are different enough from each other than that the choice is really interesting. You don't just pick this for one specific treasure, I think. So we saw the Kobold. Next is Tolin's Goblet. You draw a card and you fill your hand with copies of it. So obviously a really strong draw. The downside being if you draw a very expensive card, you can't really get rid of it. But in some kind of cheap spell rogue or cheap minions and spells, this is really powerful. And it's random, but you can control the randomness because it's cards that you chose to put in your deck. Next we have the Wondrous Wand, which allows you to draw 3 cards and play them for free whenever you want. So you reduce their cost to 0. Obviously, drawing 3 cards for just 3 mana is really strong, and reducing their cost is really, really strong. So the goblet and the wand might be a bit excluding one another, because if you build your deck to have mostly cheap things, you maybe want to use the goblet, and if you build your deck to have many expensive things, you want to use the wand. But if you're on your last cards and you know what cards are in your deck, because you're a pro player and you know that, then it makes it, the choice is really interesting, because you know what kind of cards you have and what odds you have of getting a strong play. So last is the Zarog's Crown. You discover a legendary minion and summon 2 copies of it. So it's, I think, stronger than the Golden Kobold, but it's not as roguey, I'd say, than the Goblet and the Wand. So overall, I think the Heist Baron is really interesting. You can play it easily for 10 mana. You have a Lackey, the Baron, and then you have 3 mana to play your Fantastic Treasure, which is probably a really interesting turn 10 play. And you can play it earlier if one of your Lackeys survives. And since you usually get 2 Lackeys at once, that means you can try one, and if it survives, play the Baron on 6, or wait another turn to play your other Lackey and the Baron on the turn 7. So next we have Togwaggle Scheme. So you choose a minion and you summon minimum of 1 copy of it to your deck. Each turn you shuffle an additional copy. So really strong. You would want this card to sit on your hand at least 1 of 2 turns, but just for 1 mana, shuffling a copy is already decent. The fact that it upgrades makes it a competitive worthy card, I'd say. Next we have the Daring Escape, that returns all your friendly minions to your hand for 1 mana, which is probably most useful with the shark. I don't remember the name of the card, but the shark that allows you to play twice your battle cries, and with a few battle cry minions that you then return to your hand, and you can play them again to reuse the strong battle cries. So yeah, probably could be seen in some interesting decks. So thumbs up. Next is the Waggle Pick. So lots of Togwaggle cards in Rogue, obviously. 4 mana, 4/2 weapon. Death Rattle, return a random friendly minion in your hand, and it costs 2 less. So it's a bit hard to play, hard to use it effectively, I say, since when you play it, you maybe want to already have the minion you want to get back, but if you don't have it, the opponent could destroy it, and you lose the effect, or worse, you use it on a minion you didn't want to get back. And if you so yeah, it's a bit weird to use, but on a specific minion. But maybe if you play a lot of strong battle cries, you'd want it on any of your minions, or most of your minions, and that makes it quite useful. We'll see. Next is the unidentified contracts. When you draw it, it gains a bonus effect on your hand, but as a whole, for 6 mana, you destroy a minion. So there are 4 versions of these. The lucrative contracts. for 6 mana you destroy a minion and you add 2 coins to your hand. So if you just do the math, it means for 4 mana you destroy a minion, which is quite cheap and powerful. The recruitment contract, after you destroy the minion, you add a copy of it to your hand. So this makes it a bit different from the other ones, but yeah, you usually want to destroy a strong minion, so getting a copy of it is a good thing, usually. So yeah, also a very strong card. The Turncoat contract destroys a minion and deals its damage to adjacent minions. So also different from the other ones, it allows you effectively to kill up to 3 minions for 6 mana. It really depends on the situation, but yeah, maybe it can be one of the weakest or one of the strongest in terms of destroying minions of the versions. The last is the Assassin's Contract, that destroys a minion and summon a 1/1 Patient Assassin. And if I remember, Patient Assassin is a 1/1 with stealth and poisonous. So it's effectively destroy a minion and gain something that might destroy another minion. So yeah, really strong versions, really strong card. I think this will see play a lot. And last of the rogues, we have Tack Noswhisker. Whenever you shuffle a card in your deck, add a copy to your hand. That's huge. The potential of this is huge. With Togwaggle Scheme, it's really powerful. With Togwaggle Schemes, it means you have a lot of copies of one minion. With many shuffle cards, you get a copy. It's really strong. You can shuffle cards and then play them right away. So yeah, its 6 health is decent. I don't think this card will survive 1 turn, so since it's so strong. So it limits, you usually will have only 3 mana to make some shenanigans, but maybe with coins, with things like that, you can make huge turns with this one. The next cards are the Shaman cards. So Shaman has now a lot of Murlocs, new Murlocs, and not much else in terms of new things. So the first Murloc here is Slurge Slurper, 1 mana 2/1 Murloc, which is quite strong for a Murloc since you can easily buff it. And the battle cry, you add a Lackey to your hand, is nice. The downside of Overload 1 is maybe a reason to not play it too much, but since you can play the Lackey on turn 2 anyway with 1 mana, it means it doesn't really blocks you that much. And with a few other Murloc buffing cards, it's quite good. So if Murloc Shaman is good, this card will see play. Thumbs up. Next is the Underbelly Angler. After you play a Murloc, you add a random Murloc to your hand. So one of the problem with aggro decks like usual Murloc decks is that you end up playing all your cheap minions and spells, and then you don't have cards in your hand. With this, you can reload. Each Murloc essentially means draw a card. So it's really a strong card. 3 health means it will die quickly, but if you can if it helps to the draw problems of these kinds of decks, it will be good. So yeah, thumbs up too. Next we have the Soul of the Murloc. You give your minions Death Rattle, summon a 1/1 Murloc. So obviously Murlocs are kind of weak minions in terms of health, and it's easier to buff their attack usually. So this means your Murlocs stay on the board a bit more. And since the tokens you summon are also Murlocs, then a War Leader can then buff these ones they keep buffed if there were already a War Leader on the board. Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. Thumbs up for this one too. Next is Scargill. Your Murlocs cost 1. So obviously a big combo card. You play this, you play tons of Murlocs after this for very cheap. But since Murlocs are already usually cheap, maybe paying 4 mana for this effect is a bit much. So this card will probably won't be played as a combo card on the same turn you play it and then you play Murlocs. It's probably will be played as in turn 4 and then turn 5 you play a lot of Murlocs. But yeah, we get into the draw problems. So maybe in combination with the Underbelly Angler, it's strong, but I think it's a bit late for this combo. Because yeah, turn 5 you already have really few Murlocs. You need at least this one on turn 4 and then the Underbelly plus another Murloc. So I'm not sure. But yeah, obviously if Murloc Shaman is good, it will be good, but I'm not convinced of Murloc Shaman. Next is the Witch's Brew. You restore 4 health and it essentially has Echo. Yeah, it's decent. Thumbs down. Mutate, you transform a friendly minion into a random one that costs 1 more. So it's evolve for quite cheap, but it's just on 1 minion. So you would want this on a strong Battlecry minion or a weak Battlecry minion, I mean, which has a strong Battlecry but weak body, or on just a minion that's about to die or something. But yeah, I think this card will not be put in decks, but since Shaman has some random spell generation, it's useful for that. You generate a Shaman spell and poof, it's a zero cost spell that might be useful in almost any situation. So yeah, thumbs up, but not put in constructed decks, just as a card you generate. Next we have the Muck Morpher, which is a combo-oriented card that when you play it, it transforms into a 4/4 copy of a different minion in your deck. So yeah, really depends on the minions who want this to copy into, but I'm not a great fan of combo decks. I think we'd seen a bit too many these times, or maybe just that I'm biased and each time I see one I don't like it. But yeah, also it's really bad with the Shadow Walk. So yeah, good thing that's a good thing. Next we have Agatha's Scheme. Deal 1 damage to all minions. Upgrades each turn. So this one is one of the most expensive scheme, if not the most expensive. So you would want this to deal maybe at least 3 damage to be worth your mana. Unless maybe you have a really aggro deck, you're playing against a really aggro deck and you want to kill their weak minions. But yeah, it's a control card. In control you usually want to draw a lot of cards and have a lot of cards on your hand, and this can sit comfortably and be stronger and stronger. So yeah, I think the breakpoint is like 3 or 4 damage, where you can kill most weaker things, and with a few other damaging spells or a few minions, you can soften the board and then play this and kill everything. So yeah. Next, the almost last one of the Shaman cards is the Walking Fountain. For 8 mana. It's a 4/8 minion with Lifesteal, Rush, and Wind Fury. So obviously, just the Rush and Wind Fury alone makes this card worth it, because you can play a huge card to kill a big minion or 2 smaller minions on your opponent's side, and hopefully with 8 health have this thing still alive. And with the lifesteal, it means if you're against maybe a slower aggro deck or an aggro deck that you could survive until this point, you can heal a whole bunch. And yeah, this has really great potential. The last, but not least, Shaman card is Swamp Queen Hagata. So it's a really interesting card. 7 mana, 5/5, nothing much there. But the battle cry, you add a 5/5 horror to your hand. If I recall right, the horror costs 5. You then teach it 2 shaman spells. That means you discover 2 spells, and when it becomes the battle cry of your horror. So for when you play it, the battle cry is play those 2 spells you choose. That's really powerful, really interesting, really flexible. Shaman spells are a bit all around the place. Usually there are some cool destroying effects, a few healing effects. I don't know if there's still a lot left with the rotation, but yeah, you can, with the discovers, and on top of it you discover 2 spells, you can really, I think, save yourself or strengthen yourself. I think this card is good in any situation, and yeah, that makes it a great card. Big thumbs up. Next we have the Warlock. So Warlock has some kind of new-ish archetype, which is the imps or the zoo warlock oriented demons, and a few other big demons and fun warlocky things. So first is Rafam Scheme. Only 3 mana, and it allows you to summon a 1/1 imp. So obviously not really interesting, but each turn you gain an imp. So on the second turn it's 2 1/1 imps, and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. So this card, I don't know if it will be written 8 or 9 or more, but since the board is limited to 7, you can only summon up to 7. But for 3 mana, if you can fill your board, maybe all 7 slots, or just you have already a few minions and you fill the rest of it with imps, it's quite powerful, especially with the other cards that will buff the demons. Next is the Eager Underling. So for 4 mana, you have a 2/2 Death Rattle. You give 2 random friendly minions +2/+2. So in the face of it, I don't like it too much, because it's really weak and your opponent can probably kill your other minions before this one, and it doesn't incentivize you to kill it first because it's just a 2/2. But if the opponent doesn't kill it, you can just summon a bunch of imps or a bunch of creatures and kill this guy. So yeah, I think in a zoo deck it's really cool, and like it's hard to play against, since unless you can destroy the whole board, this one with this one also, if you need to choose which you kill first, there's no good decision. So yeah. Next we have the Evil Genius. Battle Cry, you destroy a friendly minion and then add 2 random lackeys to your hand. So obviously really great with cards like Eager Underling or many other cards that you want to kill yourself. 2 random lackeys is good. Yeah, you want usually more than 1 lackey, and because of their randomness. And the 2 mana means you can play this really early and kill a 1 mana minion, or late and then combo with things to kill things on the spot. So yeah, thumbs up for this one. One of the best. Maybe yeah, on par with the rogue one. Finally, on the imps archetype, we have the Jumbo Imp. So a 10 mana 8/8 that each time a friendly demon dies while it is in your hand, it costs 1 less. So this will be a 0 mana 8/8 mostly always when played, if it's played. But I think the Zoo archetype is maybe ends up having problems with, because all their minions are quite weak, and this thing, especially after the enemy cleared your board, means you have a huge thing that's harder to play against. Next is the Darkest Hour. So you destroy all friendly minions, and for each one you summon a random minion from your deck. So I'm really not sure about this card, because you would want many cheap minions that you can just sacrifice, and you also want big minions in your deck. Another thing I'm not sure of about the wording is you summon a random minion from your deck, but does that mean you recruit him, or does that mean you get a copy of it? Because that's quite different. Depending on, you probably would want to summon a copy. So yeah, I'm not sure where this card would find a home, and if it does, it might be too powerful to just sacrifice a board of 1/1s and get 7 big cards, like 7 of the 8/8s or some things. Also, it's unclear if you only have, let's say you sacrifice 7 minions, if you only have 1 in your deck, do you get 7 of this minion? Do you get just the 1? It's unclear. So let's wait for some details. Next we have the Inferno. It gives your demons +1 attack and deals 1 damage to all enemy minions. So it has two parts. The buffing your minions +1 attack is quite useful. Maybe 3 mana would be expensive for just that. And dealing 1 damage to all enemy minions is also a good effect. The question is, both effects are too expensive on their own, and would you use both effects effectively? I'm not fully sure. Maybe this would be not used as a buff card, but mostly for the deal 1 damage to all enemy minions, and you combine it with some minion plays or summons before playing this one, but then 1 damage might be too little at this point. I'm a bit torn. I think this one would be a thumbs down, because it's kind of anti-synergistic. Next is Aransi Broodmother. When you draw this card, you restore 4 health to your hero. So yeah, it's healing effects for free, effectively, and you usually just with your hero power alone will lose health, so you probably will draw, when you draw this, you probably will restore your health, so the value will be there. And then a 4/6 taunt. 4/6 mana is a bit on the expensive side, but it's still decent. I think taunt minions are always quite good. Some are obviously bonkers, but yeah, having a taunt is in most cases a good thing. Next we have the Fell Lord Betrug. Whenever you draw a minion, you summon a copy with Rush that dies at the end of the turn. I don't like this card. Maybe if it has fun applications, but it's too slow at 8 mana, it's too weak with 5/7. The copy with Rush is useful, but will you draw enough cards, enough minions for this to be useful? Thumbs down. The next is the arch villain Rapham. Good taunt, 7/8 for 7 mana, a really good body. With the battle cry, replaces your hand and deck with legendary minions. I don't really like it. The taunt is really great, but it's kind of a last resort of sorts. If your deck really isn't good against the opponent's deck, you might want to like reset your deck, but then you may have crappy minions, you may have really great minions that don't synergize with the others. So yeah, I think this is too much of a last resort, and when you don't want to play it, it's a dead card, and when you want to play it, you probably are already dead. So yeah, I think it's a thumbs down for me. Next we have next we have plot twists. Shuffle your hand into your deck, draw that many cards. This is the single most interesting and broken card in Hearthstone, maybe? At least it's probably one of my favorite cards now. I think I love it. It's a bit anti-synergistic with the schemes and the big imp and things like that, but I love it. 5 thumbs up for this one. Next we have the warrior cards. So warrior has some kind of newish archetype with the bombs, and then its usual warrior things, armor and hurting your minions, etc. So the Clockwork Goblin is a bomb-oriented card, so shuffle a bomb into your opponent's deck. When drawn, it explodes for 5 damage. And I think it then draws another card. So it's not, you don't deny a draw, you just deal 5 damage, which is quite powerful. It's randomly delayed, which is the annoying part, but 3 mana 3/3 3 mana 3/3 is okay, and the 5 damage to your opponent's hero, actually it's not precise if it's 5 damage to the hero, but I think it is. So 5 damage is good, especially if you manage to just put your opponent at 5 or less health and they just have bad luck and draw a bomb. Next we have the Wrench Caliber. After your hero attacks, you shuffle a bomb into your opponent's deck. So 4 mana is quite expensive for 3/2. especially in warrior, since they had 2 mana 3/2. But the bomb mean you can put 2 bombs in your opponent's deck, so it's kind of a 8/2 in a sense for specifically the hero. Yeah, it's as it is, it's not that strong, a bit like the Clockwork Goblin, but with the Blast Master Boom is where the bombs become really useful, because if your opponent hasn't drawn your bombs, for each bomb in your opponent's deck, Blastmaster Boom will summon 2 boom bots. So obviously at 3 or more bombs, it doesn't get better at 4 or 5, but filling your board with boom bots for just 7 mana, and it's a 7/7, is really strong. The conditional means if you have really bad luck, the opponent doesn't have bombs in his deck or has drawn all the bombs in his deck, and you can't really play it. But you can usually just play it a bit later with the Clockwork Goblin, or just attack with the Range Caliber and have at least 1 bomb to make this one useful. And on the good side, if you had bombs on the opponent's deck and they drew the bombs, then you dealt your damage, which is already cool. So yeah, I think it's a small thumbs up, but the archetype is a bit hit or miss, literally, because you both want to have bombs in your opponent's deck, and also you want them to draw the bombs. So I don't know. Maybe the archetype could work without Blastmaster Boom. So you just want to make your opponent draw a lot of cards, so they draw your bombs. We'll see. But yeah, I think it will be really funny to see someone with a few bombs in a big deck draw them all at the same turn or something like that. Yeah. Next we have Improve Moral. So 1 mana, deal 1 damage to a minion. Okay, quite weak. If it survives, you add a Lackey to your hand. So obviously this card becomes decent with the Lackey, and 1 mana to a minion, unless you have a really strong enemy minion with just 1 health, you rarely would want to just deal the damage to kill off an opponent minion. So yeah, you already need a board to kill enemies with this, and you maybe don't want to play this on your own minions. Depends. Obviously there are minions you want to hurt, so they're stronger or they have some effects. So yeah, I think it's a thumbs down. It's not an... I don't think it's... The Lackey is not good enough in this case. Vicious Scrap Hound is really cute. Whenever this minion deals damage, you gain that much armor. So it's a cheap thing that gains you probably 2 armor if your opponent kills it with minions, or just gives you nothing if your opponent kills it with a spell or a hero power. So yeah, it's okay. It's maybe a thumbs down too. So Dr. Boom's scheme is the least interesting scheme of all. 4 mana, gain 1 or more armor. So yeah, I don't know how much armor you would want to feel good about this card, but it's probably at least 8, but probably in the 10s or 15s. No, 15s it's really great, but yeah, 4 mana for armor, it's it's really not enough, and you would want this to sit on your hand for years before playing it, so it's a dead card for a long time. So maybe in some kind of fatigue-oriented deck, where your opponent thinks you are dying to fatigue, but no, you gain 40 armor in one turn because you waited 19 turns with these two on your opening hand. But if you have two of those in your opening hand, odds are you're already dead long before you play them. I don't know. I'm not convinced. I really think this one is the least powerful and more boring, because fatigue ends up being boring, scheme. Next we have the Omega Devastator. 4 mana, 4/5, decent body, mech, so good tribe in warrior. Battle cry: if you have 10 mana crystals, deal 10 damage to a minion, which is really good. Usually this means kill a minion, or maybe if it's a dragon, almost kill it. But yeah, I love the flexibility of the Omega cards. You can play it as a decent card if you really need it on turn 4 or so, or something, on turn 4 and such, or wait till turn 10, and if you draw it on the end of your deck, it's not a dead card. It allows you to deal a lot of damage to a minion. Next we have the Dimensional Reaper. So 10 mana, summon 2 copies of a minion in your deck. So this probably would be a combo-ish card, and also not a good card, because if you only have one minion you want to copy with this, that means you have to not draw it, and if you have two copies of that minion, it's quite easy to draw it before 10 mana or before drawing the Dimensional Reaper, and that means it's a 10 mana dead card. And if you have a lot of minions, you might just summon 2 copies of a very weak or very uninteresting minion. So yeah, I think it's a bit too expensive for the effect, the randomness of the effect, let's say. So thumbs down. Next is Sweeping Strikes. Give a minion also damages minions next to whomever this attacks. So I see it as an anti-aggro card for 2 mana. If you have some minion, since aggro usually maybe is not focused on killing your minions, if you have at least 1 minion that can kill an enemy, it can kill 3 enemies. Aggro decks usually have white boards, so yeah, it's a good tool. I'd say a thumbs up. Next we have the Boom Reaver. Battle cry: summon a copy of a minion in your deck, give it Rush. So this reminds me of the other 10 mana card, the Dimensional Reaper, but is just better because you are sure to play a 7/9 and you play a copy of a minion in your deck. And it has Rush, so you are at least sure of half the value of this, and the other half is the Rush makes it useful even if it's a weaker, cheaper card. So I'm not sure if this one will see play, but if it is, I think it's strong enough to... I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not sure. I think this card is strong enough to see play, depending on which archetypes you would want your warriors. So that's it for the 9 classes card. Let's go to the common cards. So the first common we have is the only common Lackey generating cards. for 2 mana, it's just a 1/1 beast with a battle cry, add a Lackey to your hand. So unless Lackeys turn out to be really stronger than we thought, I think this card is really one of the weakest, or the weakest of the Lackey cards. Unless you really want more Lackeys, like to play the Togwaggle, it's really the weakest. And yeah, 1/1 on 2 mana is too bad, even if it gives you a 1 mana 1/1 with a nice upside. So yeah, thumbs down. Next we have Toxfin, 1 mana 1/2 Murloc, gives a friendly Murloc poisonous. Obviously good in a Murloc deck, less because it's only a friendly Murloc. If it was a friendly minion, it would be broken. But yeah, it's a fun Murloc, always buffing each other and everything. We have now the Ench Clan Hogsteed, who is a beast, a 2/1 rush for 2 mana, and when it dies, it summons a 1/1 Murloc. So with the rush and just 1 health, it will probably die on the turn you play it, and you get the Murloc that might be buffed or might buff by being summoned other Murlocs. So yeah, more Murloc-y things. So yeah, more Murloc-y things this set. Next we have the Safeguard. So it's big taunt with 4/5 and taunt, but for 6 mana. When it dies, it will summon a 0/5 taunt. So it's kind of a 4/10 taunt for 6 mana, which is really great. And the fact that it's in 2 parts and the second part doesn't really have attack is a bit less powerful offensively, but defensively it's usually better, because if your enemy has just 1 minion to kill this, it might be, or 1 spell, it's better than having a big 4/10. Next we have the Tunnel Blaster, 7 mana taunt, 3/7 taunt, that deals 3 damage to all minions when it dies. So obviously 7 mana is a bit expensive, but a very good tool against aggro decks. The Proud Defender is a 4 mana taunt that has +2 attack while you have no other minions. So either is a 2/6 taunt or a 4/6 taunt. For 4 mana, it's quite good. Next we have the Heroic Innkeeper, 4/4 taunt for 8 mana, which is really bad. And the battle cry is it gains +2/+2 for each other friendly minion. I don't think it's good enough, because 8/8 for 8 is not that great. But yeah, the taunt makes it a bit better, but Lich King is obviously a better 8 mana 8/8 with an upside, and I think it's kind of complicated to have more than 1 or 2 minions when you play this. So it's kind of a card that if you're already winning, it allows you to win more, but it's really bad if you're not winning. So thumbs down for this one. I think I will continue a bit quicker on the neutral cards. Next is Hecklebot, 4 mana 3/8 taunt that summons a minion from your opponent's deck. And it's the same thing, the wording is unclear. If you summon a copy, it's uninteresting, it's just a big taunt with a downside, and which is the most probable thing, and if you summon, you take the minion from the deck, it's really awesome, and the combo disruption is really I like it. I like it a lot. Next is spell damage taunt, 4/7 for 6 mana. A bit weak-ish, but the spell damage makes it up, and taunt is always great. Yeah, I talked about the different mage spells, like the 1 mana twin spell. The hunter spells also had 1 mana twin spell, deal 1 damage. Spell damage might become a really interesting archetype with many neutral cards to support it. So we have the Mana Reservoir for just 2 mana, you have spell damage +1, and it's a really big minion with 6 health. We have the Azurite Elemental, that at the start of your turn it gains spell damage +2. I'm not sure if it will stack after 2 turns, but probably, which is really good. And it's an elemental, so probably in mage decks you might make use of the tag. Yeah, it's a bit slower than other spell damage, but 7 health is really great to have it stick, hopefully at least 1 turn. Next we have the Spellbook Binder. If you have spell damage, you draw a card. So obviously other uses for spell damage than just damage makes the archetype more useful, more flexible, and probably more viable also. Next we have Arcane Watcher, that can't attack unless you have spell damage. It's a really strong minion for its costs, but the downside might be too hard to use on spell damage decks. So the other potential use for this would be in a silence-oriented deck, where you would play it like the Ancient Watcher, a cheap, very powerful minion, and when you silence it, you can use it to attack and yeah, use it. A neutral tool for silencing is the Dalaran Librarian. I think as a silence it's really weak because you silence your own minions, but on a self-silence oriented deck like Priest, it might see play, and it could be really powerful since you can silence 2 minions at once. Next is the Violet Spellsword. Each spell on your hand gives this minion +1 attack. So 4 mana 1/6 is really weak, but hopefully you have spells to make it better. Kind of uninteresting as it is. You usually in pro play you will want a big hand to have many choices, but this means if you play one of your spells, you lose something, which is this minion's attack. So yeah, I don't like it that much. Next we have the Exotic Mount Seller. This one, whenever you play a spell, it summons a random 3-cost beast. So 5/8 for 7 is weak-ish, but the fact that it's heavier on the health means you can summon a lot of beasts with that and have it live a few turns, maybe a few turns. And hopefully you combine this with cheap spells that allows you to, for a few more mana, summon a lot of beasts quickly. Next we have the Sunreaver Warmage. If you're holding a spell that costs 5 or more, it deals 4 damage on Battlecry. So it's probably too weak to be played as it is, and 5 mana is too expensive to maybe counter aggro with just a body. And the effect is nice. It's 4 damage. It's okay. So maybe we'll see play. I'd say it's a thumbs up for me. A thumbs down for me, sorry. Next we have the Archmage Vargoth. At the end of your turn, you cast a spell you've cast this turn with random targets. So it's a bit weird, since you would want to play this, you would want to play only one big spell with this dude out, because if you play another, I guess it chooses the spell randomly. And the fact that the targets are random means you want to play a big spell that has an effect that is not affected by targets. So you wouldn't want to cast Pyroblast with this, because it might just kill him or kill your hero. So you would want to use things like summon minions or big spells like that. So yeah, I'm not sure. I think it would be great. Also, I fully see it as a mage card. Maybe on other classes it might be better, more interesting. Yeah, thumbs up. I don't really know what it would bring, and I hope it's good. Next we have the Unseen Saboteur. Battle Cry, your opponent casts a random spell from their hand. So it's casts, and it's not a copy, so I'm really hopeful it's not just a pure downside. The fact that it's a 5/6 for 6 probably means the Battle Cry is an upside. So yeah, it's a combo disrupting tool. It might kill you, well, not kill you directly, but it might be really a big problem if you cast a big spell for free for your opponent. But hopefully some combos will have trouble with this card, against this card. The Spell Ward Jeweler is a really great card. The Battle Cry, your hero can't be targeted by spells or hero powers until your next turn. So this is a really hard card to play, because you have to predict when is the turn your opponent would like to use a lot of spells on your hero. So I like the interesting factor, especially as a spectator, when you can see both hands and you can kind of predict more easily what are the both game plans, and we will probably see really nice plays and maybe some misplays with this card for when exactly to play it. So thumbs up for this one. Next is the Archivist Elysiana. 7/7 for 8. When you play this card, you discover 5 cards, so you better place this on the beginning of your turn, and you replace your deck with 2 copies of each. So that means you replace your deck with 10 cards, more or less of your choosing. So obviously really great in Fatigue, because if you have an empty deck, you don't replace it, but you just gain more cards. It might be good with things that play with your deck. Maybe, I don't know if he's still in rotation, but the Togwaggle that gives you a ransom, and then you have your opponent's deck, most probably an empty deck or a not great deck, and then you ransom a deck with 10 crappy cards for yours. Maybe I don't think it's better than fatiguing your adversary, but yeah, I think this could be interesting. I hope it's not it doesn't push the fatigue archetype too much, because long games end up quite boring, especially if it's just have huge armor and play one card or less each turn. But yeah, I'd say a timid thumbs up. Here we have the Portal Keeper, which has an interesting new mechanic. Battle Cry, you shuffle 3 portals into your deck. When you draw a portal, you summon a 2/2 demon with Rush. So quite interesting. The fact that it's a demon is probably best in Warlock, but any class could use that. Summoning small-ish minions is quite nice in aggro. Yeah, even in control. Most decks could use this card, but I think it will most likely shine in Warlock demon-oriented deck. Maybe the Impish Warlock. And yeah, it has a nice body, 5/2. The 2 is maybe a bit weak, but yeah, it's at least it will probably kill a minion, and you have your demons in your deck. Next we have the Portal Overfiend, exactly the same effect. It's just slightly stronger in terms of health. I think in a more aggro deck you would want the cheaper version, because you can play it earlier and you have more, well, if you play it earlier you have technically less chances of drawing the portals, but if you draw a portal you're very happy because it's a free minion. And the Overfiend might also be in the same deck if you really want a lot of minions, but then you start maybe to have some diminishing returns. If you have more than 7 portals and you draw them all in one turn, you fill your board, and I think the cards are the other portals are burned or just don't have any effect. So yeah, I think maybe one or the other we'll see play on some decks that might use this. I'm hopeful. Next we have the Hench Clan Hag. So also on the idea of having a white board, the small amalgam is really cute. Here, it's really adorable. It's a smaller, cuter version of the Nightmare Amalgam, and yeah, for 4 mana you have 3/3 and 2 1/1s. It's decent, and especially if you use Murlocs or demons or any tribe and want a white board. Next we have the Mad Summoner. You fill each player's board with 1/1 imps. This is quite fun because if you have a big taunt, or if you don't really care about having getting damage from the opponent's imps, you can just fill his board and he has to, oh, actually no, because you have imps, so he will have to suicide. Yeah, forget about that. Yeah, I think the summoning imps on the opponent's side is probably only a downside, but filling your board is great, and you probably want to play this on an empty board, so for 6 mana you fill your entire board. Next we have the Magic Carpet. Whenever you play, not summon, a 1-cost minion, give it +1 attack and rush. So it's interesting, but the fact that you have to play the minion is probably the biggest downside of this card. So yeah, I'm really not convinced a deck with many 1-cost minions is that powerful. So yeah, thumbs down for this one. Next is the Potion Vendor. Battle Cry, you restore 2 health to all friendly characters. A simple, useful tool to heal. Batterhead, it's a big 8 mana 3/12 rush, just one attack, missing one attack to be a dragon, and after it attacks and kills a minion, it may attack again. So it's basically a board clear for if your opponent only has cheap or low health minions. 8 mana might be too late to counter an aggro deck though. Next we have the Traveling Healer. Divine Shield restores 3 health. Healing. Next we have Gepetto Joybuzz. Battlecry, you draw 2 minions from your deck and you set their attack, health and cost to 1. So a combo oriented card. You probably would want to draw cards like Malygos that have very useful powers, and you don't care if they're 1/1 or 4/12. Well, you don't care that much. So yeah, combo. I'd say a thumbs down because I'm sick of combo one turn kill decks. Next we have the Whirlwind Tempests. Your minions with Wind Fury have Mega Wind Fury. So interesting. 8 mana is expensive, but the effect is so powerful that it's probably worth it. And yeah, it's really great. If I recall right, Mega Wind Fury means you can attack 4 times instead of 2 of the regular Wind Fury. But maybe it's 3. But yeah, it's sick. It's sick, and maybe it's too strong. But yeah, I hope it's not another sick combo that kills you in 1 turn. Next we have the Barista Lincoln. I don't know how to pronounce the name. The Barista. Battlecry, you add a copy of each of your other Battlecry minions to your hand. So another combo-oriented card. Probably. For 5 mana, it's a bit expensive to just draw a bunch of cards if you have a big board, because it means you need to have a big board, so it's probably you would play this on a specific minion or a few specific minions, and that means combo, and that means I'm a less fan. Less, we have the Recurring Villain with a really fun theme and card art. Death Rattle, if this minion has 4 or more attack, you resummon it. So if you manage to buff it, you have more minions for let's say cheaper, but you still use cards to buff. 5 mana 3/6 is okay. Yeah, you really need to have it recurring, and that means either you have something that buffs it kind of permanently, like that Alpha Wolf, or I don't remember the name, or you have a lot of buff spells or buff effects that you play each time, and then before this dies. Yeah, I'm not really convinced. Next we have the Soldier of Fortune. Whenever this minion attacks, give your opponent a coin. Another potential silence target. Yeah, big downside to a strong minion. Not fully convinced. The Eccentric Scribe. Death Rattle, you summon 4/1/1 Vengeful Scrolls. So it's a sticky minion, but it's maybe too expensive as it is. But yeah, it depends. 6/4 is okay, and because of the Death Rattle, it's just a minion you can stick, but it's probably more of an arena minion than a constructed one. The Sun River Spy, if you control a secret, gain +1/+1. It's already strong as it is, with 2/3 for 2, it's okay. And the +1/+1 makes it quite strong, then is it that easy to have a secret out? It depends on the class, so it's okay. The big bad Archmage, 10 mana is really expensive, but at the end of your turn you summon a random 6-cost minion. So it gives you sort of 16 mana out of minions, but the 10 mana one is really weak, and the 6-cost one might be really strong, might be really bad. The randomness of it makes me really not convinced. The Faceless Rager, when you play it, you copy a friendly minion's health. It's meh. Might be strong, but you need a friendly minion. If it was just a minion's health, it would be more interesting. The Flight Master summons a 2/2 for each player. It's 3/4. It's strong enough, and then you get a 2/2. The downside is not that problematic if you can deal with it. It's okay. It's just not that interesting. The Underbelly Ooze. After this minion survives damage, you summon a copy of it, probably a warrior minion, I'd say, but I guess the copy is already damaged, so maybe 7 mana is too much, even with the weird, the card that deals 1 damage and gives you a Lackey, then a Whirlwind. You'd have, I don't know if you have enough mana, but I think yes, and you'd have 4 3/3s for like 9 or 10. That's not too exciting. Next we have the Chief Nomi, another fatigue-oriented card. If your deck is empty, it summons 6/6/6 Greasefire Elementals. So you fill your board with 6/6s. 6/6s. It's really strong, but it's a fatigue-oriented card, so I don't really want it to see too much play. Next we have a 9/9/9 Rush. It exists. Next we have a 5/5/4 Divine Shield. It exists. And next we have 3/3/3 Stealth that also exists, but a bit less since it's stealthy. And finally we have the most uninteresting card of the bunch, a 2/3 for 2 Elemental with no text. At least it's the first card in the set with no text, so I guess that makes it special in a way. So here we go. That was hopefully all the cards in the new set. This set seems interesting, mostly in my opinion because there's the rotation, so older sets are going out of standard, and yeah, I prefer it when there's some kind of new meta, because new decks can see play without the competition of the older decks or the other strong cards. So yeah, I hope you liked this video, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and yeah, see you around.